Welcome to Empower Hour. Let's get growing. Good morning. So good to be here. It was great to have a week off last week. I was in Nashville soaking up creative energy and hanging around with singer-songwriters and just checking out the scene. It was so much fun, so much fun. I'm super excited for today's guests and today's conversation. We're going to be talking about difficult conversations. And I'm going to be honest with you. Every major mistake in my adult life has been the result of either my resistance to a difficult conversation, which is one thing, or just the avoidance of the difficult conversation. And this really boils back to the conversation that we have been having about people pleasing. And I still say, people pleasing, unearthing that I was a people pleaser was the biggest shocking thing that through all of my journey and my healing, I never would have thought that. But really, I spent most of my adult life working to be what I thought the world wanted me to be. And so people pleasing is a big, big part of that. And, for entrepreneurs and business owners, so we think when we're avoiding difficult conversations, this may be limited to, and we're going to get into some of my struggles right now in my personal life, right? You think it's limited to your husband and whatever, but no, I see so much right now with business owners and entrepreneurs struggling with their workforce and getting into very dysfunctional patterns because they're operating out of fear and scarcity, and they're afraid to have a conversation because that person's going to leave them or that person's going to do this. And it becomes this very dysfunctional cycle. So I am really looking forward to Sarika Singh coming on today. She's a communication coach. She is so wise, so beautiful. She runs communicate101.com, and we're going to have this difficult conversation today because it is something that you have to be willing to really look deep, really look at the work. And I just explained, I'm going to bring Sarika up. Good morning, beautiful. How are you?
Hello, Jen. How are you?
I'm good. So I was just about to tell them that backstage, I was telling you, I was trying to have a difficult conversation with my husband last night. And I was beating myself up a little bit because in hindsight, I was like, okay, everything I just said was not what I meant to say. And like the result was not the result that I was looking for. And it's all that resistance. So at least I've made it to a place where I'm willing to have the conversation, right? But sometimes I struggle, right, with that resistance and that like just fumbling over my own words. And that really stems from that people pleasing. So my point is that because I've been willing to really take a deep look at it, I love that I was able to recognize that. And then I love what you said this morning. You made me feel so much better about it, that's the awareness. The awareness is there. So it's a process. And this is, I'm 53. So this is 53 years of untangling these habits and these instincts. And so I do struggle with this with clients all the time. So welcome. Can't wait to hear all that you have to say on this topic.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you. And believe you me, you're not the only one who struggles with difficult conversations. For the longest time, I was struggling with difficult conversations, so much so that I would avoid people.
Mm-hmm.
If there was a situation, I wouldn't at times appear there. I wouldn't go there, you know, some event or something where I knew some difficult conversation was brewing. I made up an excuse. Okay, I'm unwell. Okay, you know, I missed the bus or whatever, but I would just avoid.
Yeah.
And especially because I was a people pleaser. I think I still am, and I struggle with it because it's very important for me to make the other person feel good. And in that process, what happens is you miss out on saying what you really want to say, and the conversation just keeps tangling further and tangling further and further till it becomes so difficult, and you just putting blames on each other.
Yeah. And
So
it
for
makes,
for me, this was struggling with difficult conversations is precisely why I wanted to master this. I wanted to become better at it. I can't say master it, but become better at it slowly and steadily, so that I am able to help myself. And in the process, because when you're struggling yourself, you're able to relate to more people. So, I can talk to other people. Okay, this is what you're going through. I did this, and this is what I did, which helped me. So maybe you can try the same thing.
did
So
you just
that's
say when you are struggling, you can relate to other people?
absolutely.
I
And you
love
can
that. I've never heard anybody say
only when you're struggling. You cannot relate to anybody else till the time you suffer the same tragedy, you sail in the same boat. It's
yes,
it's like
because
quintessential.
you're right. And the minute I said last night, I am struggling to communicate this to you, I'm saying everything wrong. The conversation all of a sudden was 10,000 times better, you know? So
Yes.
you're so right because
Yeah.
yeah.
So
And then
backstage, when you mentioned this, I said, "Wow, you've been enlightened. That
mm,
it's all been about us. The difficult conversation is not about the other person.
yes,
It is the
our
problem with us." And that realization that the diagnosis of that disease is half the battle won.
yeah.
So at least we know what is the diagnosis. Now let's work towards that.
Yeah. Wow. So good. So good. So good. So how does someone get better at it? Tell me, please.
Practice, because life is not scripted. We get the more we think that, okay, I know how to handle this situation, there comes another bigger situation which you have to handle, a tougher conversation. Oh my god, I hadn't thought about this can also happen. And then slowly and steadily, if you've been good with one conversation, you start graduating from one level to the other, like they say. So I think it's just a game, and we just keep moving up the levels, and we keep getting better every time we attempt it rather than avoid it. Because more than often, we just avoid difficult conversations. We avoid all tough convos. We don't want to engage.
Yeah, our body senses, right, that anxiety that we get when we know we have to have a difficult conversation, whether it's with a coworker, an employee, your business partner, your spouse, your children, like that physiological thing that happens when you begin to anticipate the conversation. Your body doesn't know the difference between that and danger.
Absolutely. And also, it's important to understand why why I or why you as a person avoid that sweaty palmed conversation. Why are we avoiding it? Each person has a different reason. So once we've identified this is a difficult conversation, it is about me, it is not about the other person. Now, why am I avoiding it? What is stopping me from engaging in that conversation?
Yeah.
You know, there
It's
there are a couple of reasons, some standard reasons and some variable ones. But of course, we need to identify
yeah.
why is it that is it the blame? Because very often we blame others because we fear they will blame us. And that sparks a difficult conversation. Oh my God, before he blames me, let me blame him.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
And and you find yourself doing that too sometimes, like getting defensive. I was doing this
Yes.
with my daughters the other night. I was getting defensive. And then all of a sudden I realized, like, and I was like, stop. Absolutely nothing matters here but love right now. We love
Exactly.
each other. We support each other. And we're going to be nothing but kind and respectful always. And when we're
Yeah.
not, we're going to tell each other. But like this going back and forth is part of that avoidance. It's part of that resistance. It's part of,
Yes, absolutely. I
instead of
completely
trying
agree.
to make the
And
communication.
so many times we've had some painful experience, sometimes in the past, when maybe last time when we were dealing, suppose you were dealing with your teenage daughter sometime in the past, and the conversation became difficult. So now when you're having a conversation, you're again thinking about that, and you're just being protective about yourself.
Yes.
Again, about yourself, not about the other person.
People,
So
yeah, people don't need us to be right. They need us to lead. And you do not need to be right to lead. One of the
yeah.
most powerful things in leadership is being wrong and being
Oh,
able to say, I was wrong. So we need to
which is so
go,
difficult.
yeah, but
Which
it's
is so difficult.
inevitable. I mean, if you think somebody's in a position of leadership and they're never going to make a mistake, that's just so wrong. It's, of course they're going to. But being a good leader, and we're all leaders, everybody's a leader, we're all meant to lead in some capacity. And so yeah, being
At least lead our own lives.
yeah,
We're all leaders. We have to take our own initiatives, and that is leadership in itself. You don't have to be a manager or a CEO of a company to be a leader. You can
and
just lead your own life. And when you have a difficult conversation, you start thinking, oh my God, this is going to make me feel vulnerable. There's
yeah,
pain, there's hurt, there could be some maybe some disappointment coming. I could have a failure, and nobody wants that.
right. And it just gets so much worse if you decide to avoid the conversation, stick your head in the sand. And, I mean, look, sometimes there's appropriate times to let things settle down and, get the emotion out of everything, and allow a little time to pass. But typically, if it's a conversation that's just nagging, and or here's the best thing that you see in the workplace. You have that conversation with everybody else but the person you're supposed to have it with. And so this is where the toxicity comes in. So now you're venting to, and I just did it. I'm guilty of it in a circumstance. I called somebody else in this group and said, "How do you feel about this and that?" And I didn't call the person who really I should be having that conversation with, but I'm going to this weekend. So it's progress. But that's where
But what you're saying, it's so relatable. I mean,
but it
it's
happens.
completely relatable.
This is
And
what you
that happens
do.
to all of us. We don't
We,
own it up.
we
You're very
rally everybody to our side. And you know what I've learned? People will take your side on almost anything when they're with you, right? So like we validate our bullshit all the time with by bringing allies in. And no, 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 that is, now everyone in the company knows, or everybody on the team knows that we don't live except for the person who needs to know it, and then they hear it through the grapevine, and like it's just so bad.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. And I think we all have our own share of difficult conversations and things like this, which you are sharing. Believe you me, I've had my fair share, and I've messed it up most of the times. Uh, that is why I wanted to get better at it, because it was really affecting personal relationships, professional relationships, my own confidence. And because I realized that this is so important, why am I not giving it importance? I'll share a quick story from my early days as a manager. This one really sticks out. So I had this employee in the company. I'm changing his name. Let's just call him Jack for today's purpose. So this was very early in my career, and Jack had been with the company for a couple of years, and is an incredibly nice guy. His performance was extremely good, but lately his performance was slipping. So he was given a lot of feedback over time. Things were not improving. And I was told to let him go. Now, this was like, it was breaking my heart. And I did not know how to do that. You know that gut wrenching feeling that you get when you know that someone you know is going to be told to let go by you. So it was very early in my career, I think first 5 7 years, and my line manager knew that I would hate doing it and I'm just not up to it. So he was the one who ensured that I was the one belling the cat. And I think it was his way of teaching me. So he's been a great mentor. And I try to pass it off. You know, we live in a culture where we are taught avoidance. But when you have to do it, when you realize it's like a no go, you start pumping on all cylinders. So, you know, and one of my mentors had seeded it in me that people are not receptive till the time they feel understood.
Mm.
So this was the only thing which I kept telling myself. I have to understand him. I have to understand him, then say it. Although my head was saying, just tell him they want you to go. You know, put it on them rather than my saying that, you know, you are being fired. Because that was the moral of the story. But I said, I need him to receive it well because he's been a good worker. And this thing that people are not receptive until they feel they're understood, I use this as a Bible all the
Mm.
time.
Mm.
So I still remember he knew that something was coming up, something was brewing because I had called him for a meeting. But I put myself in his shoes first before I started talking. Because and this I'm sharing because this was my first achievement where I did not mess up. So I remember him sitting down, a bit shaky, a bit nervous that something was going to happen. And initially, we just chatted. We talked about the good things he'd done, but he knew something was coming. So I did tell him that there were some performance issues, and you know, slowly, the look on his face changed, and he was kind of turned into a statue, you know, motionless. I was the one who was talking, kept filling the room with my words. So it was more like a solo conversation. And with time, he did join the conversation, and he communicated that he was feeling overwhelmed, he was feeling unsupported, that you know he was being given more work than he could handle, and things like that. So he was trying to struggle to balance everything. But once he talked, it felt like the weight was lifting off his shoulders.
Yeah.
And, you know, probably nobody had really spoken to him so openly about his work before. I mean, he did leave the company. It wasn't just a, you know, you're out kind of moment. He's still on my LinkedIn. And in fact, I coached his team in his last workplace once. But his, the way we spoke, he didn't really feel the pinch that he was being let go.
Yes.
At least somebody heard him. He was also able to put his point across. And that message, I ensured that the HR received, and they, you know, understood why a person was struggling, and, you know, some systems had to be brought into place. But for me personally, this was a turning point. You know, it really transformed me because I realized that talking, that helping him vent, helping him put his point across, really made me grow as a person.
Yeah.
And I think we both walked away with a deeper respect for the power of you know honest human conversations. It was not like, you know, you're out and somebody is showing their arrogance that you're being fired, and he felt you know low about something, or there was a blame kind of, you know, blame game kind of a scenario happening. I think it was more respectful, more communicative. I understood his point, he understood my point, uh, and I think that's the way it needs to be. once we are open to that communication, both parties. But if I did not put myself in his shoes, if I did not tell myself, suppose somebody comes and tells me, you are being let go, how would I want that person to talk to me?
Yeah.
I wouldn't like it if somebody just came and said, you're fired.
Yeah.
I would like to know why. I would like to tell him why I'm not delivering whatever are the expectations. So hear me also out.
The
You know?
breakdown in almost all relationships is that lack of communication and the unsaid things. And one thing I loved, couple of things that hit me when you were just talking. Number one, almost always the most compassionate thing you can do for people is be honest with them about how in evaluation, honest feedback. That's how people grow. And so all that resistance is a reflection of you, just like you said earlier. It's not really, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt the other person or this and that, because you just said it. Like, that person felt better, they felt understood, they felt heard, they felt seen. So it's crucial. But it's so funny because I was in real estate for nearly 30 years, and when at some point I got heavy into property management, and the landlords loved me because I was so good at evicting people. Yes, I'm going to say that again. I was so good at evicting people. And it's because of what you just said. So it's easy for me to have difficult conversations with strangers, but not
Wow.
with people who are closest to me, which is so true. But because I would approach them first with, how are you doing? Is there anything I can help you with? What's going on? How did you end up in this place where you're, a couple of months behind, or this is happening? And, would have a conversation, not just put a piece of paper and be like, you need to leave. So I had the most amount of people cooperating, because oftentimes when you're evicting somebody, they want to, like, just drag it out. And so funny because some of those people that I evicted ended up being clients buying properties in the future, or other rentals or
Yeah.
whatever. So
It's all because of the conversation which you had with them,
yes, because
you know?
I sought to understand first in those situations. But why do you think it is that we struggle with the people that we are closest to, the people we love in our family, our coworkers, the people we see every day? Why do we struggle more there, but yet I can go knock on a stranger's door, and it's not even just me, because in real estate, hiring people, when I'd be like, okay, now you got to go cold call people, they couldn't do it. But if I said, if they were cold calling for themselves, they couldn't do it. But if I said, can you cold call these people and tell them you're calling for Jennifer Marr, they could do it all day long. Why do you think
Very
that
well
is?
said. Very well said. And in fact, this stems from the fact that, people we are close to, whether it's family or it's professionally, we are close to someone or we know them, we uh, we start having some kind of a bias. Something tells us that if I say this, this person is going to react like this. So once we know that, that is like registered in our head. So our response, our reaction starts going. We don't experiment with newer things. We don't experiment with the process. We start we start going with that bias. For example, if it's your teenage daughter who wants to, go for a late night party and you want to say a no. Last time we did talk about this. You want to say a no, and she's very clear she wants to go, but it's a difficult conversation you want to have. Now your daughter is very close to you. You know, if I talk to her in a authoritative way, this is how she's going to respond. If I talk to her in a, in a empathetic way, I tell her how my life was and how my mom allowed me almost everything and I messed up big time in my youth, and I don't want you to suffer the entire pain. The conversation could be different. But if you're talking to a stranger, that stranger, you don't know what the reaction is going to be.
Mm,
So your dealing with a stranger is very different from anybody you are close to. And that knowing that person changes the entire dynamics of the conversation. And also, apart from that bias, you are more impacted. You worry more about the reaction of the people close to you than a stranger, because their reaction really matters to you. If
yeah,
it's your employee or your boss or your husband or anybody close to you, how they react is going to have a personal impact on you,
yeah.
and that changes the game. If it's a stranger, if you're doing it for somebody else, it's very easy to, like typically it's very easy to preach. It's very difficult to,
Oh yeah, especially online.
it's very easy to say, do this. Oh, difficult conversations are so easy. But when it comes for you, when you're in that, whirlpool, that is the time when it actually, how you handle is what actually defines how good you're at it.
And I think a lot of this also is about, it's confidence, but it's a different kind of confidence. It's not a bravado, right? That's that, what you were just saying, like, oh, this is easy, blah blah blah. That's bravado. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the inner kind of confidence, the inner faith, the inner authority, the inner empowerment, and knowing that you're having this conversation from the right place because you're in the right place. That you're, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not just, if you take the time to prepare, right? So now in the circumstance with my husband, I've said what I would like is an exact day and time. It's okay if you can't tell me that yet, as soon as you can, so that we can both be prepared for the conversation, because I think that that's important too, when you have time to create some space and some silence to, get into your heart, get into your gut, get into your brain, have all your brains working together, and allow that intuition to take over. I think that that's super important, because, and that's where the confidence comes from. It's not, and that's what will make the difference in the conversation for me anyway. So for me, preparation and proper, and really examining my motives, what I want to get out of it. And then I think sometimes we think, who are we to have this conversation? And that's, we lack that conversation. Like, we lack that confidence in a sense. Like, yeah, who am I to say this? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, and very rightly said. And in fact, when you're having a tough conversation, sometimes you tend to beat about the bush.
Yes.
You sometimes sugarcoat stuff.
Yes.
Like you dance around the issues. Like you said, you were talking to a colleague and not the person you were wanting to have the conversation with. And this usually makes things worse because, uh, of course, I don't mean be harsh, but if there's no clarity, if there's no honesty in what you say, there's no point in saying anything at all.
Yeah.
So, without firing the bullets, be clear about what you're feeling, and what you need to communicate.
Yeah. So when you said about this, said, you know what, I want to master this. I know we're not using the word master, but I want to really tackle this, get really great at this, make mastery part of my journey as far as difficult conversations. How did you go about, you said practice before, but what are we practicing?
Yeah, so I've just I use some very simple strategies um, to handle, I wouldn't say master, but handle difficult conversations so that they are not very negative for you, and you start approaching them with ease. If you ask me honestly, they are so, so, so difficult, but also they are so, so, so simple.
Yeah.
I'll explain that. So when you have those moments when, those moments when you want to run and hide, like I used to always, if if only we remember that they are unavoidable. You can't avoid a difficult conversation. So handling them well is the only thing which can make the difference. So if mentally you prepare yourself that it is going to be there, I just have to learn to handle it well in any relationships, be it work, be it home. You have to have an intention to handle them because the life you want is actually on the other side of that hard conversation. So personally, what worked for me and what I always advocate is, um, in fact, my daughter loved this one when she was going through her own difficult conversations in the university. So I said, get comfortable with discomfort. You know, it might sound counterintuitive, but difficult conversations are difficult for a reason. They're not going to be a walk in the park. But when you expect that discomfort, it's a lot less intimidating.
Oh, yeah.
You know, whenever someone I'm coaching starts to freak out at the thought of a difficult conversation, I give an example which my dad taught me. So he says, think of it like building a muscle. You know, the first few reps, they feel tough, but it gets easier with practice. So start with that slow speed, a 2 or 3 on the treadmill before hitting that 16, but start somewhere. You have to invest in yourself to build this skill. I'll be honest, and this one's personal. I used to avoid difficult conversations, like I said, like a plague. I'd dance around them. I hope they would resolve themselves on their own. And spoiler alert, they never do. And then one day, during a heated exchange with a close friend, a really close friend, I realized that discomfort was making it worse. So I leaned in. I said, my very close friend's name was Jyoti, and this is her name. So I said, Jyoti, it's hard for me to say, but I value our friendship way too much to avoid this. I did own up to, couple of things which I did. And slowly, when we were talking, she also owned up a couple of things. And what we were feeling uncomfortable about was no longer uncomfortable. That honesty shifted everything, and we had a real dialogue.
Yeah.
So you have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. That discomfort has to be faced head on.
Yeah.
That's always, always the first thing to do.
Yeah. So true.
Remember earlier today, I talked about Jack, the employee who I was asked to let go.
Mm-hmm.
There, I used the second strategy, which is extremely important. For example, you want to have a tough conversation. You're going to have a tough conversation with your husband next week, right? So, to have any good conversation, the same strategy which I used for Jack, I put myself in his shoes. It has to be about empathy. If the other person does not feel understood, he will not be receptive.
Yeah.
He will not connect with you. He will not talk to you. And the conversation would be dead before it even started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I recall a few years ago, I was working with a mother of 3, who was struggling to communicate with her teenage son. And she felt like every conversation they had turned into a battle, and they both walked away frustrated and hurt. I mean, we've all been there as a teenager and parents of teenagers. So, what do you do then? How do you talk to them? You just flip the script. I know it's easier said than done, but the minute you start talking, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
That little, I see where you're coming from. That simple line can go a long way in de escalating any situation. So, the only thing that helped was that she had to put herself in her son's shoes. It wasn't about agreeing with him, it wasn't about giving in or letting him do what he wanted to do, but showing that she cared about his perspective. So, whenever you're talking with anyone, be it on the personal front, be it on the professional front, you have to communicate in a way that We're on the same team. Let's figure this out together. And this reframing the mindset really, really helps in any situation. Any ticking time bomb can be disarmed. And all these difficult conversations are sitting on a time bomb.
Yeah.
The more we avoid it, chances are it can just, blow up anytime. But
Agreed.
but the minute we say we're on one team, poof, the tension diffuses.
So true. We have a question here. What if the other person is avoiding the conversation? You get a lasso. Shh. No.
This happens all the time, isn't it?
Put a pillowcase over their head and kidnap them. No, just kidding. Yeah, because we're all the same, and that's where when like I said, when the conversation was breaking down yesterday, and I just went right into, listen, I'm really struggling communicating what I'm trying to say right now, and then it became, because I can tell he was on the defense. I'm like, I have that habit of putting people on the defense when I'm struggling, and start saying things that make them feel that way. And that's so not what I want to do. But anyway, so by just being honest, that's how I don't want to have this conversation either, but it's extremely important. So how would you handle it if you know the other person is avoiding?
So whenever you want to have a difficult conversation, either you want to avoid it or the other person wants to avoid it. It's always the case. One of you or both of you would want to avoid it, because everybody is worried, what is it that's going to happen? Oh my God, there's going to be a failure, a pain, something bad coming. So our mental kick is stay away from it. It'll happen on its own, but it doesn't happen. So when somebody else, coming back to the question, when somebody else is trying to avoid the conversation, don't push him, because he's going to, come on his defense. But show him, like I said, that it's about him. It's going to benefit him. What you're going to say is going to benefit him, not you.
Yes.
The minute people start feeling that it's about them, they are going to get something out of it. It's almost like a sales pitch. If I want to sell you, say, this pen. Now, if I say this is a beautiful pen, it works wonders, and it has very smooth writing, and this is only for $1 today. Please buy it. Blah blah blah. Are you going to buy it? No, you won't, because I'm selling the pen. What is it? What is there in for you? So suppose I say my storytelling changes. This is one pen which has been with me for last 30 years, and I sleep with it by my bedside. Middle of the night when I have some bright ideas, and believe you me, whenever this pen is by my bedside, I always get brilliant ideas. And I scribble those ideas middle of the night, and in the day when I get up, I work on those ideas. And those have turned out into some brilliant podcasts on my podcast channel. Today, I'm willing to let go of this pen just for one lucky winner. Believe you me, that if I say something on these lines, more people will be interested to win this pen for some challenge, because they feel there is something in it for them.
Yeah.
The minute the other person starts to believe that the conversation is about him, it's going to help him. Yeah. It's going to turn out, the result is going to turn in his favor. The person starts talking. He becomes more open.
Yeah. Reframing them as like a pathway to clarity and growth, and approaching it with curiosity and openness. And this is going to bring us to the next level, rather than that dread. And then also, I think being very clear on you yourself, again, part of that preparation, being really clear on the desired outcome. I'm practicing NLP, learning, working on a certification, neuro linguistic programming, for whoever doesn't know it. And they have one of their presuppositions, right? Things that we assume as we're learning is your communication is whatever the result was. It doesn't matter what you said, it's what result you got out of your communication. So being super clear on your desired outcome before and taking into consideration, applying that emotional intelligence, putting yourself in their shoes, like you said, all of this, um, and really being able to lead with empathy and listening to the other person's perspective, being direct but kind, is really the key to all of that, especially for the people, if you don't have this kind of approach with people who are avoiding the conversation. Oh, okay. So here we have another question. I'm always wrong. I'm just kidding.
Loving the question.
When you're a very passionate person, we can tend to speak sometimes and then realize we didn't have all the information or whatever. So, I am familiar with this, but I can't wait to hear how you would handle this.
So are you saying that when you've approached a situation, if I'm framing it correctly, when you approach a situation without really knowing
I
all
guess
the
so,
aspects,
yeah.
all the aspects, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So what I learned and now what I teach is that preparation is crucial. I would say any kind of preparation is crucial, but it's very important to just stay flexible. You can't script emotions. It's like cooking. You can follow the recipe, but you need to taste as you go. You need to be ready to make the adjustments because variables will always be there. So it's okay if you did not know everything. How you approached it next time, you just need to one, gather more information because before you speak or before you approach the conversation. And if you have already approached the conversation, there's no problem just following up. There's no problem, just checking in. How are they feeling? Did the conversation leave any loose ends? It's like you making sure that after the storm, is everything still standing? Are you both on solid ground again? So if whatever you had to say is already done and dusted, you can just start by acknowledging the difficulty of the conversation. Hey, I know your chat, our chat the other day was a bit intense. I just wanted to check in. That little statement can go a long way. It shows that you are aware of the emotional weight and that you've been open to discussing if it's needed further.
I think also when you are wrong in something, this is just another difficult conversation to have. But I can tell you that the vulnerability, that space of vulnerability, when you admit I wasn't right on this and I'm here to correct myself, goes so far because everybody's been wrong. Everybody's said something out of turn or, whatever, didn't have all the information. It's happened to everybody. So when you're able to have that difficult conversation, I think that you actually build a closer bond and you get more respect and trust.
I
Because
agree.
now nobody thinks you're not going to make mistakes. They're just wondering how you're going to handle them. Are you going to hide them? Are you going to, right? That's really it. We know everybody that we ever work with, of course, is going to, and people can't be fully empowered if we are not okay with them making mistakes. It's really how you handle the mistakes. And so there's another opportunity for a difficult conversation. And it sounds to me,
and in every conversation, there will be situations where you missed out on things. Because when you're talking, there's heat in the conversation. I don't mean that there is anger, but there's an emotional overdrive. There's a hormone overdrive.
absolutely.
So talk when that dust is settled. Say something like, hey, I've been thinking what we discussed. I'd love to clarify a few things to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
You can even, the best thing which works is just lighten it up with a sprinkle of humor. Hey, that was a hefty conversation. Let's catch up over a coffee. Let's talk about something a bit lighter. And
Yeah.
actually talk about something a bit lighter.
Yes. There's that. Remember the sandwich approach.
Oh yes. Oh yes. That's in fact my favorite approach. I used to use the sandwich approach whenever I had to say no to somebody, which was a very difficult conversation for me
Yes,
personally.
I just been doing this. I'm building my team around me of people who offer different type of things. So when a client comes to me and wants me to do something, and I've been guilty of doing it in the past, all of a sudden I'm doing marketing, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And now it's like, oh, that's fantastic, that you want to branch out into that. And I do not actually offer those services. However, I have this amazing person who specializes in that, and I would love to make that introduction. I'm using that sandwich approach right there. So the sandwich
Yeah.
approach, tell us what the sandwich approach is in case someone doesn't know what it is.
Yeah, for all of you who would love to know what is the sandwich approach, it is a very, very easy approach. We all eat the sandwiches, and you remember the filling? The filling is basically what you want. And the top, the bread piece on the top and on the bottom is what they want to hear.
Yes.
So start with something they want to hear.
Yeah.
Then put nicely a generous helping of what is it that you want. You can have all the cheese and the lettuce and the,
Yo.
smoked and the fish and whatever you want. But in the end, again, say what is it that they want to hear. Because if you do not start with what they want to hear, and if you do not end with what they want to hear, the sandwich is not going to taste as nice.
Right. They might not even swallow it. They just spit it out. I love that. Yeah, I forgot about that. I learned that as a cheerleading coach 20
Oh,
years ago. Yeah. Um,
wow.
okay, so we had Jose brought us another question. How can I stay calm and composed during a difficult conversation? Oh man, I
That is so difficult.
I am a crier, and oof. So tell us, how do you stay calm and composed?
Yeah. So first thing I would say, how to stay calm. It's very, very difficult. Um, and every situation just shows you that it just becomes more difficult every time because the situation keeps becoming, bigger with more variables. So first thing is mentally tell yourself that it's not a mountain, you know. Don't make it sound like a big deal. Tell that to yourself mentally. That itself, first of all, will calm your nerves. If you start thinking that, okay, today I have to, maybe ask for a raise, or, maybe one of your employees. Suppose you're a manager, and your um, team worker, let's call him Asal. He, for the sake of example today, let's say he wants to continue working remotely, and the whole team is allowed only 50% remote work. Okay. And you're the manager, you're very angry, right? You're like, go on. You can go work somewhere else. Of course, that's what you want to say.
Right.
And you're very annoying. You're very annoyed because the entire team is suffering. He's giving a bad example to people. So how do you calm your nerves? And then talk to the other person. So how I would say, use the sandwich approach. Okay. I understand, Asal, that previously with COVID uncertainty, we were allowing more remote work. Now that the trajectory has changed, we feel it's important for team culture, and we see that the other person is at least 50% working from home, and then 50% we see the person in we see the person working in person in office. This, of course, should be done in a healthy and safe way because we want you to be comfortable, we want others to be comfortable, and we want to have a positive environment in the office.
Yeah.
So just let us know what we can do to make you more uncomfortable while maintaining the company policy.
I love that.
So
And
you use the sandwich approach, but you have to keep your cool. You have to strategically approach it.
yeah.
Because if you're blunt, it's not going to work.
So
The
also,
minute you,
yeah, go
the
ahead.
minute you, the minute you, the other person feels that he's talking about his benefit and not mine, he will be on the defensive, and that can just, you know, the argument can just grow bigger and bigger. The conversation is only going to become more and more difficult.
So true. And this also goes back to that preparation and really being able to, one of the greatest things work that I have done in the past few years is shadow work. And shadow work really helps you to identify why you're triggered by certain people, by how they're acting, by what they're doing. And it is quite often a reflection of either a part of you that you don't like and you are hiding and just shove away, and or you actually wish, like I remember with women, strong, really opinionated, which I always thought I was, but the ones who could just say no, the ones who could just say it like it is, and you'd walk away irritated, like who are they to do that? And it's really because I was jealous, like why can't I just say it like that? But it took me all that work to realize. So stepping back and trying to understand, why am I so emotional about this? Why am I so triggered? Really identifying it so you can separate it, because like you said before, it's typically not about them. It's about you. Almost anybody that's eliciting super emotional reactions out of us, it's not because of what they're doing. It's something within us. We're not victims, right? We're not
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think, these days, the younger generation, who's entering, say, the professional world, I think they find it far easier to say a no or to be blunt about things than people our age.
thank
They
God.
don't really think about, okay, what is he going to feel? Because it's all about I. So the
Yeah.
minute you focus on that I, the rest of you touch that bit of narcissism in you,
And we all have
and
it. We all have it.
we all have it
We all
in
have it
our own
all in our
concealed ways.
everything. Yeah. And it's hidden or it's latent, and or you don't, you know, I'll give you a really quick example about shadow work. So laziness. This was something that was triggered in me all the time when I would judge my daughters so hardcore, people that worked for me, whatever, when they would be, taken off for their birthday. That used to just like, who takes off for their birthday? Like, why are you taking off for your birthday? Like, like different things, or like, someone who's just able to do nothing for a day, or I would be so judgmental, and really just it sparked so much in me. And then when I was doing the shadow work, you have to do this process of what are you judging? They're lazy. And then you have to say, I am lazy, I am lazy, I am lazy, until all of a sudden I realized I am lazy. I love being lazy. I have been fighting my laziness my entire life. And now I made a decision to bring my laziness to the table. What's up, laziness? What's going on? What do you need? What can I do for you? And accepted my laziness and loved it. And now, so my lazy time used to be very guilt ridden, binge watching, eating ice cream, and that guilty pleasure kind of feeling. Yeah, not anymore. It's not that I never do that. It's just now my laziness has turned into, what books can I read while lighting a candle and putting on incense, and what other class, or what can I, my laziness has actually unopened a deeper level of productivity because I've allowed it. Taking off Fridays, that's not lazy. It's literally doing the most important thing in the world to me, spending time with my granddaughter, right? So it opened up so much. So I think being really careful with these difficult conversations and understanding why you're so annoyed that they're lazy. So it's not to say that they're not, right? But what about it is making me so angry, right? Because sometimes you also have to look like, are they being lazy but getting everything done? Am I actually just mad that this person can do all of this and then still, be on Facebook for an hour on their computer? And then you have to put it in perspective, right? Why am I so aggravated? The results are there so that it's less personal. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And so many conversations become difficult because we start taking things very personally.
Exactly.
We forget. I mean, for example, all situations. You can ask for a pay raise. You want to approach, say, self-appraisal. You want to ask your manager for some time off, and he refuses. You just take it personally without thinking that it's actually, there could be a reason behind it. Suppose your
It-
subordinate, he comes and says, "I don't want to do this work." Maybe he's being given too much work.
right.
Maybe the manager is giving him his own work. Maybe the manager is actually asking him to work on odd timings. But when he says, "I don't want to do this," we just take it personally.
And like even that person that we're saying, they're on Facebook for the last hour of the day all the time. Maybe that's what they're using to motivate themselves to stay completely focused on task, no interruptions, no distractions. But then at the end of the day, I get to do this. Right. So it's
Fair
not
enough. Yeah.
traditional. It's not all of those things. But if you're getting amazing results and, now you're learning that this is part of their process, but you can't discover that and learn that if you're triggered and you're angry and you're annoyed and you're thinking there's only one way things can be done and it means you have to do this and blah blah blah. So this goes so deep. Like you could just keep unpacking this conversation because
Absolutely.
it really boils down to knowing who you are, what you want, and being able to communicate that with clarity and make sure that you are living in a way that you are taking care of yourself, but supporting and loving and uplifting up everybody around you. And
Yeah, and keeping your focus correct.
if it is, even if you enter the difficult conversation and you say everything wrong and you're coming from the right place and you're going to evaluate that conversation, figure out where you went right, where you went wrong, what you need to do differently, and then go back at it. Like it's never going to go, as long as your intentions are in the right place, it's never going to be this terrible circumstance,
I completely agree. And you hit the nail on the head.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. We also have a podcast episode that Sarika was on, and it was awesome. So check out Soulful Prosperity. Here is her information. Is there anything that you want to communicate that you have not communicated out so far? Anything special you have going on? Any programs or any message? Oh, I removed you. I meant to remove the slide. Or any messages you want to get out to our audience.
So I would just say that if you lack the confidence or the courage to engage in a difficult conversation, it's possible that difficult situations may not be resolved. They may not be resolved the way you were hoping, but you can always upgrade your skills in handling difficult conversations. And this can happen with some training, with some practice, with some applying that training. So be open to learning. I'm always open to learning newer things. And I would just advise that be a learner and keep learning new things, keep applying new things so that you can handle any situation that life throws at you with ease, with comfort, and the difficult conversations don't stay difficult anymore.
I love
For
it.
everything else, there's my podcast. I'm going to plug it in. Communicate 101 Speaking Writing Tips. We have at least 3 episodes on difficult conversations. I'm sure you're going to get some meat out of it, something which can benefit you, some scenario which you can relate to, and something which you can apply in your everyday life. So please just don't listen to it. Try to apply things, try to practice things. Because very often we keep seeing, say, YouTube videos or Insta stories and reels, and we keep saving them. Okay, this is nice, let me save it. But it's important to actually go back to it, apply it.
Yes.
That's when the learning really starts.
Yep. Implementation. Absolutely.
Implementation. I
And
keep sharing little tips on my Insta handle, which is Communicate 101, which is again little snippets about in this situation do this, if this happened handle it like this. I'm sure something might come handy some point in time, but till the time you apply it, it's all theory, it's not practical.
well, thank
I
you.
hope you're able to benefit from it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what a good conversation we had today. I'm very grateful. I can tell you that it's going to help me so much on some of the conversations that I have coming up. And I truly believe that when we're approaching, because there's so many, I'm writing a blog right now about workforce struggles. And I can see that difficult conversations has become even more difficult because people are so afraid of losing. I don't know what's going on in your country, but here the workforce is weak. You know, people are struggling, especially in certain industries. Um, you know, uh, retaining people, getting them
It's a
motivated.
universal phenomena. It's a universal
Yeah,
phenomena.
yeah. So I really believe through clarity, alignment, you're going to see less stress around these situations, empowering your people. And nothing can empower people more by your leader leaning into difficult conversations for growth. And it's going to make a huge difference because you're then going to, there could be, you know, things that they're afraid to communicate, you know, that they're afraid to speak about. And you don't even know that you're creating this toxic culture of hindering open communication. So really important stuff. I encourage you to reach out, dive deeper. And if you stumbled upon this, scan this code, go to this URL, and you will get my Soulful Prosperity Toolkit. And you will also get access to all the past Beyond Limits. We've had some amazing, amazing guests. And of course, you guys, if anything here resonated with you and I can support you in any way, jennifermara.com/schedule. We can do a deep dive call and see how I can support you in any way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jen.
Have a
Always lovely talking to you, and thank you for the time and space.
absolutely. Thank you. Have a great weekend, everyone.